This is an audio version of my written review of Jurassic World Dominion, which can be found on our website. This is a non-spoiler review, and if you would rather go and read it for yourself, it is linked in the comments below. Jurassic World Dominion will finally stomp onto cinema screens across the world this Friday, the 10th of June. Although many of you may have already had the chance to check out this new adventure in the Jurassic universe. I was lucky enough to see an early screening of the film here in the UK thanks to Frontier Developments and Universal Studios. In this review, we'll break down my non-spoiler thoughts of the film. If you want to go in fully fresh, then I'd recommend skipping this, so you have the chance to form your own opinion. But if not, let's not waste any time diving into a world dominated by dinosaurs. The first thing to note right off the bat is the fact that this film needs to be seen on the big screen. Jurassic movies traditionally have big blockbuster moments, and this film is no exception. The natural scale and scope of the story which is told here means that you really want to experience this on the largest screen possible. The filmmakers spared no expense in this regard, so don't spare any expense on your cinema tickets for this one. We all know the saying, don't get cheap on me, Dodgson. The large nature of the set pieces does mean that pacing is at a premium here, however, with the film sometimes feeling a little rushed as it goes from one action moment to another. There are certainly areas where I would have liked more breathing room to explore the understated details of the universe the film is set within, but perhaps these are areas which will be more pronounced with subsequent viewings of the film. Another thing which many people have rightfully praised this film for is the prevalence of the animal variety throughout, and I have to admit there is a lot packed into the 2-hour 20 runtime. I love that we saw not just dinosaurs but some additional animals too, really broadening the breadth and depth of genetic technology present within the franchise. Ian Malcolm teased in Fallen Kingdom that genetic power has now been unleashed, and it certainly feels that way with the volume of new creatures we are introduced to. With that said, it does sometimes feel as if the story we are presented with here strays a little far from what we perhaps expected at the end of Fallen Kingdom. This is very much set within a world where dinosaurs are in the wild, but the scope of the story feels as if it goes in a newer and more refined direction. Don't get me wrong, there is some continuation of story threads found within the prior entry of the saga, but the story direction did feel a little bit jarring at first, given where we last saw these characters. On the subject of characters, the new and returning characters are written very well for the most part. I really enjoyed getting to meet Ramsey and Kayla, and the antagonists for the film felt well written with some interesting and unique backstories. I have to admit that the casting for the new characters was fantastic, and the actors portraying them really brought their A game. There were some great moments packed in for lots of the characters throughout the story, with everyone feeling as though they got the chance to progress and move on from the point where we last saw their characters. The only caveat on the character front is that there were a couple of moments where some of the more comedic scenes, in particular cameo type moments, felt a little bit forced and out of place for Jurassic. But, on the whole, I don't think that they detracted from the experience too much and only temporarily broke my immersion. Characters were a real strong point for the most part in this film, and I would love to spend more time with Ramsey and Kayla, particularly in some kind of future spin-off. I will say that one area which I felt particularly conflicted on was the sense of finality which came from Jurassic World Dominion, or rather the lack of any meaningful finality for the franchise. The marketing pitching this as the end of the Jurassic era certainly had me expecting a more meaningful conclusion, but it feels like the film perhaps rushes past a few of the moments which could expand upon that sense of finality in favour of the more spectacle-driven moments we touched on earlier. Whilst this isn't necessarily to the film's detriment, as those large-scale moments and beats are worthwhile in most instances, it does feel as if some plot points are a little bit rushed here, and this perhaps emphasises the lack of resolution which is felt by the end of the film. With that said, however, I did actually like the fact that everything wasn't resolved as simply as we may have expected. It is easy to argue that the dinosaurs could have just been tranquilised and moved to an island again, and that would have been the end of the film. So I do appreciate how Dominion grapples with how to make this more of an ingrained problem, even if that is to the detriment of a conclusive end to the saga. Ultimately, I do think the areas which didn't necessarily appeal to me are made up for with the fantastic job that this film does thematically. We all know that dealing with something like dinosaurs or genetic technology has huge ethical and moral ambiguity. Indeed, that ambiguity is in the fabric of much of Michael Crichton's work. Dominion does a fantastic job of sprinkling in some genuinely thought-provoking and engaging moments, which I think will start some interesting discussions and debates. Indeed, the arguments put forward within this film are more pertinent now than they have ever been before, and that is something which is ingrained into this franchise and its history. Jurassic Park still stands the test of time because so many of its challenges and trials are relatable, even to a modern day audience. And I think that Jurassic World Dominion may have much of the same appeal for years to come. There are also plenty of fun callbacks to classic moments and characters which help to really frame this within the franchise and the IP, reminding us of the film which started this great journey, whilst also reminding us of some of the climactic moments which we have seen throughout the saga. At its core, this film is a love letter to some very Crichton-esque themes, and that is something which I really appreciate. Overall, Jurassic World Dominion is a really fun ending to the Jurassic World arc and the wider story here. I think a lot of the problems I had with the film in its current form are minor compared to the sheer love that it shows for this franchise, and the way it perfectly incorporates the moral and ethical quandaries which have been ingrained in the DNA of this franchise since 1993. There is a lot to love in this film, and while some moments certainly were a little too on the nose for me, I feel that ultimately they don't detract from the sense of enjoyment I got from the film. New dinosaurs, new locations, and new characters are always a welcome part of any franchise, and Dominion certainly delivers on all three. I will be very interested to see where the franchise goes from here. That's my thoughts, but I'd love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Keep them non-spoiler. Please don't spoil this film for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but I'd love to know your non-spoiler thoughts on the film. Thanks for checking this out, and stay tuned to the Jurassic Park podcast for plenty more soon.